Have you ever just looked at a price tag and thought, wait, why does it cost that much? It can feel kind of random, right? Like prices just change on a whim. Well, it turns out there's a really powerful economic tool that explains all of this. And today, we're going to use just the first half of that tool to crack some fascinating price mysteries you've definitely seen yourself. For instance, remember during the pandemic, the price for a life-saving ventilator just went through the roof. What on earth was going on there? Or here's one we've all seen. How come a dozen roses are so ridiculously expensive on Valentine's Day, but then a week later they're a fraction of the price? And don't even get me started on gas prices, right? One week they're up, the next they're down. What's with those wild swings? Well, believe it or not, the answer to all of these mysteries starts with one single fundamental concept. All right, so to start solving these puzzles, we need to meet our first key concept, demand. Now, in economics, demand doesn't just mean, wanting something. It's actually something much more specific. Demand is all about the relationship between two things, the price of an item and how much of it people are actually willing and able to buy at that specific price. It's the direct link between cost and our desire to buy. And this whole relationship follows a really simple, totally intuitive rule called the law of demand. All it says is this: when the price of something goes up, we tend to buy less of it. And when the price goes down, we tend to buy more. I mean, that just makes sense, right? So here's a demand schedule. It's just a fancy table showing this in action. Let's look at bicycles. You see here at $140, people are ready to buy 18 million of them. But you jack that price up to $300 and suddenly that number plummets all the way down to just 1 million. It's a super clear relationship. Price goes up, quantity goes down. Now, what's really cool is when you take those numbers from the table and turn them into a picture, you get this, the demand curve. It's just a graph of that exact same data. And see that downward slope? That is the law of demand in visual form. As the price on the side goes down, the quantity people demand on the bottom goes up. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. That curve isn't set in stone. That basic relationship between price and quantity is just the beginning. What happens when our actual desire for something changes, for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with its price tag? Imagine, for example, a new fitness craze just sweeps the nation. All of a sudden, everybody wants to be a cyclist. Suddenly, people want to buy way more bicycles at every single price point, right? Doesn't matter if they're $140 or $300, more people want them. So what happens to our nice little curve? Well, this is what happens. The entire demand curve literally moves. It shifts. Because of that new fitness craze, demand has increased, and you can see the whole curve has shifted over to the right. All that means is that at any given price, people are now willing to buy more bikes than they were before. So, what kind of things can cause a whole shift like this? Well, it could be a change in our tastes, like that fitness thing, or maybe we get some new information. A change in our income can do it too. There's actually a whole list of factors. Let's dig into a couple of the big ones. Yeah, a change in your income is a huge one. For most stuff, what economists call normal goods, when you make more money, you buy more of it. Think new shoes or nice jewelry. But for other things, inferior goods, the complete opposite happens. Like if you get a big raise, you're probably going to buy less instant ramen, right? Because you can afford better food. So your demand for ramen actually goes down. The price of other stuff also matters a ton. First, you've got substitutes, things you can use instead of each other. So if the price of Pepsi suddenly goes way up, what happens? The demand for Coke is probably going to rise. Then you've got complements, things that are used together, like SUVs and gasoline. If gas prices go through the roof, you can bet the demand for big, gas-guzzling SUVs is going to take a nosedive. Okay, listen up, because this next idea is probably the most important thing we're going to cover. This is the absolute key to understanding those mysteries we started with. You have to know the difference between a movement along the curve and a shift of the curve. They sound similar, but they are totally different things. And this graph right here shows you everything you need to know. Getting this visual locked in your head, that's the secret to thinking like an economist. All right, first up, a movement. This happens when the only thing that changes is the price of the item itself. Let's say the bike shop just has a big sale. We haven't changed our minds about bikes, we're just reacting to the new lower price. So we simply slide down the curve we're already on, from point A to point B. This is called a change in quantity demanded. But if an outside factor changes, like our fitness trend, then the entire relationship changes. The whole curve itself shifts. We jump from point A over to a totally new point C on a brand new curve. This is a change in demand. And that shift, that is exactly what happened with ventilators in the pandemic. It's what happens to roses every February. The fundamental desire changes and the entire curve gets redrawn. So I think we've got a really solid handle on the buyer's side of the story now. But here's the thing, demand is only one half of the equation. To get the full picture, we have to bring in the other side of the market, the sellers. And that other player is supply. If demand is about what we, the buyers, are willing to do at a certain price, supply is all about the sellers. It's the relationship between the price of a good and how much of it sellers are willing to make and put on the market. And you'll notice right away, the relationship here is the total opposite of demand. For sellers, as the price goes up, they're willing to supply more bicycles. It makes sense, right? It's more profitable for them. So at $140, they'll only supply 1 million bikes. But at $300, oh yeah, they're happy to supply 17 million. Which leaves us with the big ultimate question. We now understand the forces driving the buyer, and we see the forces driving the seller. But what happens when these two sides of the market, demand and supply, finally come together? Well, that is where the magic of price is truly revealed. And that is a story for our next explainer.